All right, so we're here in Genesis 15, and Abram is making a plea to God, saying, "God, I don't have a son," because up until this point, Abram and Sarah don't have any children. They don't have any children, and Abram is wondering who is going to be the heir. Who is going to be the heir to his wealth? Who is this son of his that is going to carry on his family name and fulfill the promise that God made to him, that his descendants are going to be like the number of the sand in the sea and the dirt in the ground. Well, God confirms it. He confirms it with Abram and says that, I know you don't have a son right now. I know you don't have a son right, but you will. You will have a son. You will have a biological son. Even though you're in old age right now, you're going to have a biological son, and your descendants will be like the stars in the sky. He tells them to look up and say, like, that's going to be your descendants, as many as there are stars in the sky. So, this makes me think about a lot. It makes me think about promises that God makes to us. They're promises that he is going to keep to. He plans and he will uphold those promises. So as we read through scripture, when God makes a promise, he is going to keep that promise. You can, just like he says it will, whether it's a blessing or a cursing or whatever, he is going to hold true to that. He just doesn't say things and then change his mind or say, nah, I didn't really mean that, or I'm going to do something different actually. God knows what he's going to do. And sometimes we can't see what God is doing because we're too focused on our circumstances. And it sounds crazy because imagine being told, hey, you're gonna have a lot of offspring. You're gonna have a lot of descendants. You're gonna have a son. You're gonna have grandchildren, great-grandchildren that'll go on for generations. It'll turn into a whole nation of people, the Jewish people, and then just be like, I don't have a son. I don't have a son though. How am I supposed to, my wife can't have kids. We've tried so many times and we just can't have kids. And, my heart breaks for a lot of people out there that are going through infertility right now and difficulties with that. I mean, it's tough. It's certainly difficult to, go through something like that. It's not something that I've ever experienced, but I've certainly experienced times of trials in my life where I was praying for something and asking God for something, and I felt in my heart that God wanted to give it to me, and I just wasn't seeing the evidence of it happening. I was focused on my circumstance. I was focused on the state that I was currently in, not thinking about the promise that God is taking me to. And that's a hard thing. That's really a hard thing to reconcile in our brain, because we want some type of evidence that God is working and that we want to see how it's going to play out. We want to see how it's going to map out. Like, just tell me, God, how are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? Show me the path that I have to be on. And the truth is, we're not going to know. We're not going to know. So, if you're praying for something today, or if you feel that God has made a promise to you, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope or sight of that. Don't lose confidence in God. As the book of Hebrews says in chapter 10, verse 35, do not cast away your confidence, which has great recompense for reward. God rewards faith. It says that this is one of the most important parts of this chapter, was Abram believed. Abram heard what God said. Even after all of Abram's doubt, he believed. I said, you know what? I believe God. I believe this is going to happen. And it says that he believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. So that is what made Abram righteous, was that he had faith in God. It also says later in the book of Hebrews that without faith, it is impossible to please God. So faith is an important part of our journey. And Abram's faith was being tested by the fact that his circumstance did not align with what God's promise was to him. But that will change. Now, we get to the next part where we talk about promise. We're also talking about prophecy too in this chapter. God is visiting Abram in a dream, and it's like a nightmare. It says it's like a dark and horrible dream. It's like a nightmare. And he shows him that his people are going to be captives in a land that is not theirs for 400 years. Think about the generations of people. Just, the generations of people that will not get to see their own land again because they've been captive. They've been captive in this foreign land for so long. Now, I know what this is referring to. This is referring to Egypt. This is referring to their captivity in Egypt. And God is basically saying to Abram, like, this is going. I'm just giving you a warning. I'm just sharing with you that this is going to happen to your people. He's giving him a heads up. And I'm not quite sure what the significance of that heads up is, because Abram's not going to see that. He's not going to see that play out in his lifetime. That's going to happen to his descendants. But God is prophesying, and that prophecy comes true. It comes true because, again, what God says will come to pass. So when I think about, too, as well, God's ultimate purpose and his plan for us, it doesn't always involve things we're going to like. At the end of the day, there might be some trials. There's going to be some tribulation. There's going to be trouble. There's going to be long periods of difficulty and struggle. But at the end of the day, righteousness comes from our faith in God. And we know that our reward is not here on earth. Our reward is in heaven with him. So, Genesis 15, I wish I could have the physical copy of the Bible in front of me right now so I could go through it in some more detail and think more about it, because I'm sure that I could talk about this chapter for a while. But that's what's calling out to me today in Genesis 15, and we'll move on to Genesis 16 next. We're getting closer to what I think is one of the most important parts of the book of Genesis. So you guys have a blessed day, and I'll talk to you soon.